My name is James Kearns. I'm the commercial manager at a company called Kefron, and we specialize in accounts payable automation for businesses of all different shapes and sizes. I'm very, very pleased to say I'm joined by one of our customers, Nathan Chalk, who's the finance manager at Allego.
I am the finance manager for our EMEA company and for our EMEA revenue operations as well. So that's my main focus, as well as various other bits of G&A and commercial analysis.
Nathan, tell us a little bit about Allego as an organization. The Kefron sales team, so my team, the commercial team, do use Allego's call recording and sales enablement platform. So we are using each other's technology, which is a nice story to tell. But Nathan, in terms of you guys, give us a little bit of insight.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. What we say is we're a market leader in sales enablement. That's not just what we say, it's what Forrester say as well. Coming up on 1 million users now. Well, we should hit 1 million this year, I believe, globally, including, 4 of the 5 largest global medical device companies, 5 of the 10 largest banks in the US. But I think 1/4 of the Dow Jones Industrial Average of companies are using our platform as well. So very exciting. 250 people now we have across the US and the UK. Our UK company joined forces with our US one about 3 years ago, I think it was. But for all of that, we only have 6 people in finance because we're very technology driven. We like to adopt solutions to let our finance team do the best work they can.
Brilliant. Nathan, in terms of just the main finance tools, obviously there's a major brand name that most businesses will recognize on screen in terms of Sage. Can you just give us an insight into, I guess, what systems you're using right now within the finance function to drive that team?
Yeah, so as you say, we use Sage's Intact platform, which I think for a lot of companies in the software field, they'll be familiar with. It's Sage's ERP offering, which is, I think, to some degree specifically aimed at SaaS businesses, although it's an ERP, it's bigger than just a general ledger system. There's a huge amount of customization involved. So obviously we use Kefron for AP as well, as I think we'll probably talk about a little bit more today. Out of the US, we use Bill.com for bill payment, because that's a platform offered by our bank. Right. So the way that we can use the 3 of those together has always been quite important to us. And we also use Adaptive for business planning. We have a lot of other smaller plugins as well, as you'd expect in the world of modern finance. One of the advantages to all these tools is you can customize them, you can plug a bunch of things in.
The next slide, which is all about change events, right? So this is something that I'm really focused on. Every time I speak to a new organization that's thinking about technology, right? There's always something that's ultimately compelled the business to reevaluate the way they're doing things. And we always refer to them as change events. So a change event simply is something that occurs in a business that compels you to reevaluate what you're doing. And usually that's driven by one of these kind of key drivers. Nathan, when you kind of think about, I guess, what compels you to kind of look at different technology solutions, I know you talked a lot about, your kind of ethos as a business in terms of technology first, but what are some of the things that crop to mind or come to mind in terms of what you were trying to do?
Yeah, so it was really interesting when you showed me this slide, because we actually hit a number of those boxes. So as you say, we have quite a slim finance team, and it's quite an experienced finance team as well. So our ethos has always been to give our team the tools to make the most out of things, rather than to look to hire junior people who are more focused on doing one task.
Right, okay.
So, I think there isn't anyone who works in our finance team who has less than about 10 years of experience.
Okay.
But what we were finding as well is that, with how the business had grown over the previous few years, AP was taking up more and more time. And, our team of quite experienced people were spending quite a lot of time doing very manual jobs of inputting, coding up transactions. So we wanted to reduce the amount of time we were spending doing that. At the same time, obviously, we had the acquisition of the UK company by the US one, and the UK company had been using Xero, which, at least had some level of innate functionality for this, but not fantastic, and the US one was on Intact. So as part of migrating the UK company over to Intact, we needed a better AP solution as well. So I could spend less time, from my perspective, doing manual work, inputting things, as well as Intact doesn't innately do a good job of capturing that data either.
Okay.
You've also got cost control though for us as well. I think that was a big one.
Yeah.
You know,
especially as you're growing, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. With all the growth we've been through, with all the headcount growth we've had, having a tighter grip of where we were spending money, having a more process and professional approval process for that was important to us.
Okay.
And it just meant that we could do a much better job of planning, of budgeting, and of monitoring how we were doing against budget as well.
Yeah, understood. I think, look, the one that you touch on there in terms of, I guess, providing meaningful work for those more experienced and more expensive, probably given the team's experience, is just being able to provide that meaningful work. And I think a lot of the businesses that I speak to, that's one of the key things that they're trying to address, right? So they go through a recruitment drive, they've got a finance team that they're really happy with, they're experienced, they know what they're doing, they're kind of the team that are going to bring them to the next stage of their evolution. But that team become bogged down in menial tasks in terms of entering data into finance systems, and ultimately becomes much more difficult to retain those people, right? Especially when probably the last couple of years we've been through a little bit of a talent war, specifically in the UK. So yeah, as you say, you probably touch on more than one of the boxes that you can see on screen. The kind of thing we were going to talk about was, I guess, the specific challenges, right, that you guys were experiencing as an organization. But before we go there, like, how did the whole journey start? Like, what did the kind of start to finish look like in terms of, I don't know, looking at vendors, maybe getting different people involved in the process? Can you talk to us a little bit about why accounts payable and that kind of journey you went on?
Yeah, sure. So in one of our, finance team catch-ups, we collectively kind of went through what our main pain points were.
Okay.
And we very quickly decided that AP was becoming far too much of a pain point for us, and that we wanted to at least explore having an AP tool. The other idea we were floating was we could potentially hire a junior AP clerk instead.
Right.
That was something that was on the table. So I took away the task of going away, looking into the market, researching some options, speaking to some vendors, and then presenting those options back to my counterpart in the US and our global CFO. So the three of us were going to sit down and then decide, based on that, what solution kind of matched what we were looking for. So we did start by looking at a couple of the larger players in the market.
Yeah, as you would.
But their solutions actually weren't exactly what we wanted. They didn't necessarily tie in with some of the systems we were already using in the way we wanted. They did some things that we didn't want and didn't do some things we did want. And frankly, they were extremely expensive as well.
Right, okay.
In a way that just wasn't particularly justifiable.
Yeah.
At the same time, I actually, in one of my more commercial elements of my function, saw that we'd recently signed Kefron up as a customer ourselves. And about that time, I think one of your business development guys, Adam, reached out to me.
There's lots of different vendors on the market, right? And certain ones do things very, very well. Certain ones don't do things as well. But lots have different functionality, right? And I think it's just about finding the right fit for your organization. What you mentioned also was you realized that accounts payable was one of the major pain points, right? Or one of the major challenges or areas that you wanted to try and address in terms of pain. I've flashed up some challenges that, look, I hear pretty much every day speaking to different people like yourself in finance. And look, probably depending on the business, some are more challenging than others. So I think about, a lot of the business that we would speak to that deal with stock or issuing purchase orders have a high volume of queries that come in from suppliers, right? So if an invoice doesn't match a purchase order that's been created in the finance system, usually that means that they need to engage different people involved in the P2P process, including suppliers. A lot of customers talk about, geez, the amount of time we spend on preparing for audits without an automated system or a platform to access information easily makes it very, very difficult for that audit point. But for you, what were kind of the top three challenges maybe that you guys were trying to address as a business, specifically related to AP?
So I definitely think cutting down on some of the manual data entry was an
Yeah.
important one. If not necessarily delays in the approval process, then visibility of that approval process and having a good audit trail for it was one that was really important to us.
Okay.
Because we were doing approvals before, but we were doing them all manually over email,
Right. Yeah.
which means that if another member of the team had done them, I couldn't necessarily go in and see who had approved X invoice,
Yeah.
and indeed check that it had the right approval. There wasn't really that visibility or audit trail for it. Well, now in the system, you can set up your rules, you can have a hierarchy to who has to approve certain things.
Yeah.
So that's really great, I think. And I think duplicate payments as well, big one for us. Fortunately, we had a compensating process in place to catch duplicates, and so that we at least wouldn't really pay things twice.
Okay.
But duplicate entries were, I think at least a significant worry.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Look, I think they're all, again, every business has an accounts payable process, and actually all are very, very different, is what I've found. But the challenges are similar across the board. I found some of the things that you were touching on, in preparation for today's session, really interesting in terms of, really on the cold face of it, how the solution has kind of enabled you to, I guess, be a little bit more flexible. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what we've been able to do, I guess, collectively, but more so your team, given you're using the platform?
Yeah, so the flexibility point, I think, is a really interesting one. So we have, as I mentioned, a very small finance team. And what that means is we have to have good redundancies in place. If anyone wants to go off on leave, someone's got to be able to cover for that. And, I had a period of illness before Christmas where I was off on for a prolonged period of time. My counterpart in the States recently had to go off for personal reasons for a week or two. Having this platform set up, it ties into the remote work point you made, right, James? I can cover work that was previously being done in the States that we were largely doing by email before we started using Kefron. And now I don't have to go and get access to this person's email address for a week, go through their emails and dig out the ones that are relevant for AP. Instead, we're routing them directly via a mailbox into the system, and I can just go in and deal with them, whether they are UK invoices, US invoices, somewhere else entirely in our process. It just means, we can feel, frankly, you can also just feel a lot happier taking a day or a week of annual leave without feeling like everything's going to collapse.
Yeah, coming back to a mess or added stress that you don't need coming up to month end. This is going to give more flexibility across the business and allow people to jump in at different stages of the process to get things that need to be addressed as quickly as possible. And again, if you think back to probably what you were doing previously, those type of things were getting probably caught up or lost in mailboxes and knowing, lots of people didn't have the visibility of that process. From your perspective, is there anything else when you think back to, I guess, the time that you spent on the project that you would advise people to focus in on or spend as much time as they can on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key points I would highlight are about making the most of your testing period. So when we were adopting Kefron, you guys gave us a period to test the system, get it configured how we want, and to work with one of your specialists on doing that. And really making the most of that time is, I think, vital to getting the most out of the system once you then switch it on.
All right.
One of the things that I think worked very well that we did there was we brought in some of our approvers who had kind of the most volume of approvals and got them to basically during the testing time approve a few dummy runs that we ran through there, so they could feedback to us on how to make their experience as an approver right. I think that's a key to success.
Customers, and this is something we're continuously developing and making sure it's better suiting our customers as we go.